When men have a centered, grounded place amongst their brothers,
Mm-hmm.
it allows them to show up more powerfully for the women in their lives,
Wow.
also for life in general.
Yes.
I always say, like, there's this guy playbook that nobody knows who wrote.
But everyone follows it.
Yeah, like, hey, we should be this way, we should be that way,
Right.
or like toughen it up. And like, do I think we need resilience? Yes. Do I think we
Absolutely.
need to like men thrive in a lot of things when they live on their edge, they have a purpose, and they have a woman to fight for. Our lives are not compartments. Like, we try to say they are, and like we lock things in boxes, but how you do one thing is how you do everything. So
that's right.
if you talk to any business leader, any CEO, or anybody that runs a business, they'll say this: like 90% of their work problems are personal problems in disguise.
Wow.
And that's the truth. And so wherever you go, you bring yourself with you.
Welcome to the Nurse on Purpose podcast. For the month of June, we're doing something really special, highlighting the voices and stories of men who are making waves in nursing. While nursing has traditionally been a female-dominated profession, it will always be a profession for both men and women. And it is important to show the range, the skill, and the impact that men bring to this field. The quiet strength at the bedside, the bold voices in the boardrooms, the innovators in research, and the healers in every corner of healthcare. This month is for the brothers who have chosen compassion without apology, who wear the title nurse with pride and power. We see you. Every week this month, we're honoring the impact, the stories, and the future of men in nursing, because their presence isn't just valuable, it is vital. So whether you're a man in the field, a student on the path, or someone who simply wants to understand this profession through a different lens, this one's for you. So let's get into it.
Hey guys, and welcome back to the Nurse on Purpose podcast. So in the month of June, we're turning the mic toward the often unsung voices of men in nurses. And we're continuing today with someone who is as purpose-driven as he is powerful. Todd Angelucci is a nurse, a coach, a brain tumor survivor, and resilience advocate who is on a mission to help healthcare professionals reignite their purpose, lead with confidence, and build wealth with impact. Todd is breaking down more than just barriers in healthcare. He's challenging the silence that too often surrounds masculinity. Through his coaching and his message, he calls for a tribe called the Man, a space where men can show up fully human, vulnerable, brave, and bold enough to grow. So in today's episode, we're going to be talking about purpose, leadership, and redefining strength in masculinity. Todd, you're welcome to the podcast.
Oh, wow. Thanks for having me. That was a wonderful introduction. I was like, whoa, who's that guy?
I didn't even exhaust the entire list. But I'm going to let you really just talk about who you are before we dive into the entire journey of nursing and kind of what inspired you to pursue a career in nursing. So tell us a little bit more about who Todd is.
Yeah, it's an ever-evolving process, which is great. It's a part of being human for sure. But my journey, I had a challenging upbringing, to be honest with you. I always say, my parents were challenging and I had a tough time and I didn't know what I wanted. And I didn't really like have this calling to be a nurse. All I knew was I got out of high school and everyone went to college, and so I should go to college, and I failed out. I had way too much fun and less interested in that. And so my dad's like, listen, I'm not paying for you. So I had to figure out a way to go to school. And this was back in the late 80s. I'm dating myself here. And he, so I joined the military to actually pay, because there was no, I couldn't qualify for loans. I was like, what am I going to do? And it was probably one of the biggest pivotal moments that helped me, face in my life. I was scared and nervous and did awesome, but they're like, oh, what do you want to do in the military? You have to pick a specialty. So I just was like, oh, I'll be a medic. And so there we go. That was my first kind of, and then like, what did I want to go to school for? And I didn't want to like go to medical school. It just wasn't a calling for me. I didn't feel like all that education. And I grew up in the 80s. For people that could relate, there was still Sylvester Stallone. He was in this movie Cliffhanger, and he was like this rescue guy on the mountain. And so I was like, man, that's what I want to do in a medical space. So that was really my driving force. I wound up meeting my military, obligations. They
Yeah.
paid for me to go to school, and I embraced it, and I did really good in school. Still had some kind of bumps and bruises in my life, but like that's human beingness, and wound up becoming a nurse. And I basically was like, wow, this is great. My track needed to be ICU. So I went to ICU to get that experience. And I got burned out pretty quick, actually. I was like, whoa. And I had a couple friends that were doing medical device sales, and they're like, there's money here. And I'm like, cool. So you think it would be a natural fit for a nurse to go into medical device sales, but that's not true. They would rather have somebody that has sales experience. They could teach products and stuff rather than nursing. So it was a challenge. I grew in that space, won multiple awards in that space, and wound up just an interesting journey. I did some leadership stuff, traveled around the world with that, and then I wound up getting burned out just traveling. And honestly, I picked up some, per diem stuff. I built a business. I built a couple businesses. I built a coaching business around health and wellness. I did a lot of different things in the nursing space, and I helped another guy with a business as well. And it was pretty cool. And I wound up also being a director of an assisted living. I did some director type roles, and I did some sales and marketing in home care, and I helped build certain businesses there. And then I grew a revenue line in a large health system that they wanted to expand upon, that my friend brought me in, and we really did that together in a large health system, which was cool. And throughout that, I've done a lot of different like coaching and mentoring. And honestly, in a business I was running, my friend brought me into that business, and she was like, initially like, hey, can you come per diem? And I said, I could do that because I'm working my businesses. And then like literally a week before, she's like, can you come full time? I really need your help. And that's when we built that business. But this kind of segues into the brain tumor. So this all occurred, COVID happened, right? And then I was doing this role, and thank God, because I had benefits. Before I had like business benefits, I was cobring, when you're doing entrepreneurial, you're kind of navigating business, benefits. So to be honest, it like kind of a divine thing that occurred was I had a year under my belt at this job, and I got diagnosed with a brain tumor, and it was literally kind of out of nowhere, and it was a gut punch from like, I didn't even know, like you can't even imagine. So the journey on that, like facing my mortality, had me looking inward at some spaces that you don't normally address, and facing healthcare as a patient rather than a consumer, rather than a nurse.
A nurse, yeah.
Yeah. And so I was like, oh my God. And I navigated that pretty well. And through that, I grew, and I had I'm one of those that because I had a business side of me and I had a lot of growth and development, I invested in myself. And so I invested in coaching in a business because I grew pretty well, and I felt like I was stuck like at this level. And I was like, subconsciously, like there must be something I'm not seeing here. So this particular coach utilized the assessment that measures our habits of thought. It's a pretty awesome tool, and it was just awesome, and it changed my world. And my brain tumor diagnosis, he's like, Todd, are you interested in exploring helping people with this? And I was like, yeah. So I dove into that, and that's where it really expanded this coaching, mentoring. Like everyone throws the term coach out, but this is really some deep stuff that helps people in so many areas of their life. And I've been helping people with that for sure. And I do some part-time nursing because of the benefits, because I have this brain tumor that I have to navigate, and the benefits are better in that way. And I've jumped back really into helping nurses in this space with the mentoring.
Mm.
I really just helped other people, but the nursing
Mm.
space had a little bit challenging. And the only reason I jumped back into the nursing space was I had a couple clients. I'm an energetic, like if people are attracted to working with me,
Mm.
and I noticed some habits of thought that the nurses that I worked with, the professionals, were keeping them stuck. So I was like, let me jump into the space. And so I've been on LinkedIn and really kind of driving and met you and a whole bunch of other wonderful people. So that's
Yeah.
kind of my little view there. That's kind of the 300,000-foot view.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. I mean, again, vulnerable about your journey. Where are you now with your diagnosis and management and with the brain tumor? What stage
Um,
are you now in the healing?
yeah, so I had brain surgery and it was a success. Thank God I'm here to tell about it. But
Hmm.
you live through surgery and then you got to figure out what's next. And I
Hmm.
was lucky in a sense that he got it, most of it, and at first they didn't know. Like this was the alarming side. He goes, "Oh, we did a section in the OR, and they're not sure what it is," which you're like, "Whoa." You know, and we're gonna have to send it out. I had to wait 2 weeks, and he had this weird look on his face, and I said, "Okay, like, what does that mean?" He's like,
Yeah.
he goes, "All right." I go, "What if it's cancer?" And he's like, "Well, then I got most of it. We'll zap it, all that." But the long story short, and there was a little bit of a journey. I went through multiple scans, and I am probably 5 years out, which is nice,
Nice.
and stable scans, which is nice,
Hmm.
and I've supported the brain tumor community a lot as a result. And I actually had a podcast that was birthed out of that, like more
Yeah.
of how people dealt with kind of gut punches in their life, and that
Yeah.
was kind of the fascinating track that I went on. I learned a lot for sure.
When it comes to coaching, right, you talk a lot about group coaching, individual coaching, but one thing that you're super passionate about is men in nursing, right? And this being June, the month where, we celebrate men, whether it's Father's Day or for me, just celebrating men in general all month long. I wanted to talk about your particular draw to men in nursing, right? And you created the group, The Man, right, which was Men in Nursing before, but now the name shifted to the Men's Alliance, Strength in Service, Brotherhood in Action. What inspired you to create that group?
So the interesting story around that is, like I said, I had a coach and a mentor, and we were we were talking, and he's like, "Hey Todd, have you ever explored this in your life?" He saw some things showing up, and he recommended a book, and the book was profound for me. It was called No More Mr. Nice Guy, and it was written by Dr. Glover. And I
Mm.
recommend every guy read it. And it's not like this thing about, oh, be this tough guy or anything. It's about this nice guy syndrome, and where men have like really lost a lot of their authentic self. And so in the effort to be nice, they've sacrificed a lot of their authentic self.
Mm.
It comes out in sideways behaviors in their personal relationships,
Mm.
or not really direct relationships. And it's kind of this mellowed out man, and men are silently struggling and they just have challenges. So when I read that, I was like, oh my God, that's just kind of like me there, right?
Mhm.
And I wound up joining his inner circle group, which was great. It was a great group, and there was tons of people, and I learned a bunch, and I was like, wow, this is very fascinating, but this could be done differently. So this has nothing to do with nursing in general. This is just more my personal journey.
Right.
And so honestly, I wound up creating a group of men that I felt like, wow, this would be great. And I have my own private men's membership group, and it's not the Men's Alliance. This is just more of a Zoom thing, and we meet 2 times a week.
Mhm.
And I was like, wow, this is super powerful. And every guy that I mentioned, like, the question I ask guys is like, who do you spend most time with? And they're like, well, my wife, my partner, people at work, or whatever. They really have had, some of them may have had issues with their dad, so they like exiled their dad inside, and so they often exile their masculinity in a way that they don't even realize.
Mm.
And we've grown in a society where it's not, I don't want to use the word safe, but it's not, okay to be, there's all these misconception terms on masculinity. People are like, misogyny. We're not talking about misogyny. We're talking
Right.
about authentic masculinity.
Mm.
And so the guys silently kind of struggle. They keep themselves soft in a lot of ways. They go along with things. And they've actually, I'm very passionate about some of the things I've learned in this, and it helps women. I've had more women reach out to me. And because they've absorbed the space that was left by the masculine space with the men fully
Mm.
stepped into, and it
Mm.
causes them stress in their own world and in their
Resentment.
relationship, you know? So
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually creating a theory about it. I'm working with a male nurse that we're actually, you know, I have this theory around it, which is based on some books and some things I read and my experience in working with people. And so that really sparked this thing. Like I totally went in the space. And so I jump in LinkedIn and I'm searching these groups, and there's like no men's groups, like in nurse. And this is like, I'm like, yeah, I'm in nursing. Let me check the men's space out. There's the American Association of Men in Nursing, which is a great organization. I've really connected with a lot of guys there. But I would post in their groups and it was like crickets. There's like nothing, right? So some people were commenting on some articles. So I reached out and I said, hey, is there a men's group here? And they're like, no. So honestly, what I did was they're like, start one. So boom, that's the inspiration. I started it, just leaned in, and I said, this is a cool space. So I created the group. People were like, oh, this is awesome. The ladies in nursing were like, wow, this is a great, you know, we represent maybe 12% of the nursing population, you know, give or take a few percent. And then it really started to expand to the service member, more people. And I'm like, listen, if you're a guy, just hop in here. Healthcare professionals, I've been talking to doctors, and literally people have been popping in, and we grew in a relatively short time. I want to see it grow more for sure. And then what I found powerful and what I do is I created a once a month, like let's just pop on a Zoom, just the guys, because in that group, ladies can join. It's great. It was like, hey, you could join, just don't be weird. You could be in the group, you know what I mean? Just like understand that you're in the space and you can learn. And so it's kind of grown in spaces. And through that, there's like been some people that have reached out in different spaces that's wanted to learn more.
Yeah.
I've asked for kind of some collaboration, and I'm actually working on some research in the space, which has been pretty cool.
What are some of the biggest themes that you have noticed in your conversations once a month or just throughout the month in your chat groups?
You know what's interesting, and I shared this with, so I have a men's group now, and we've been in existence over a year, probably well over a year. And I've watched them grow, and I've watched myself grow. When men have a centered, grounded place amongst their brothers, it allows them to show up more powerfully for the women in their lives.
Wow.
Also for life in general.
Yes.
So I've watched it. So we had the first one in April. And the interesting thing that I learned was the guys, like I shared my story. I had a guy talk, and I had another person who I'm doing some work with, super guys, shared a little bit. And everyone just finally started to just open up. And what I loved about it was they just felt okay to start talking. And you could just feel kind of the emotion, some of it a little pain, and just being heard and creating that space. And it reminded me of where we started. You know what I mean? Like of where I started, or the guys in the other group, because we're so far along. And I'm like, wow, this is such a powerful thing for men, just to be a brotherhood, just that in itself, never mind the stuff that we walk through. And so that's kind of one of the things that I thought was really, really awesome.
This really touches me because I see the value when women gather and are vulnerable and can open up honestly and have conversations about life and their struggles and their successes. But you never really see that with men. And it's such an important thing because we're all emotional creatures. Like women may be more emotional in certain ways, but men are emotional too. They just show it differently. Why is it difficult then for men to open up and share about their struggles, about their, vulnerabilities, and just about who they are, and open up to other men or women?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because they don't. I was just on the phone with a guy this morning because we were going over stuff, and he just shared an interesting story. And he's like, I was at it, and it's about a guy just being vulnerable and being authentic, and like, creating space to be like, this is really what I'm feeling, rather than pretending or pushing it down that it's not okay. Because I always say, like, there's this guy playbook that nobody knows who wrote.
But everyone follows it.
Yeah, like, well, like, hey, we should be this way, we should be that way,
Right.
or like toughen it up. And like, do I think we need resilience? Yes. Do I think we need to
Absolutely.
like men thrive in a lot of things when they live on their edge, they have a purpose, and they have a woman to fight for. And you can
Mm,
see that in many ways. And women don't want guys to make that, they don't want to be their fight. They want to be in the journey with the guy, an adventure.
yeah.
And the one thing that I've learned that's really powerful is when men start to step more authentically into themselves, they could sit with their pain, because we all have
Mm,
pain,
yeah.
and we could just be with it and start to explore it and honor it. We could explore and honor it with others. We create space for the women in our lives, because women have an amazing energy, but it's very an emotional up and down energy.
Mm,
And when women feel that they have a grounded, guided post in in the male energy, it gives them the freedom to be more of who they are,
mm,
which is really a powerful position, a place. And I have a theory on how this works, because without grounded male energy, the female energy just goes off the charts,
yeah.
which is really fascinating. And it's not about women's rights or any of this. It's just about the energy and about what that means. And women don't trust men for various reasons, because they're
Mhm.
inauthentic. They don't trust because they can't be with themselves. Why could they be with somebody else in a way that's powerful?
Mm,
Not in this powerful way, but just in more, like, I've gotten on more calls in probably the last 2 months with women whose energy I just love, and
mm,
I see the dynamic between her and their spouse or whatever, and I'm like, what would it be like for you to just honor your energy, allow him to, if he's open to working on
mm.
it, to be in that space, and it
Yes.
just goes to a wonderful spot where both of
Mm,
you could be. But the male often wants to fix, which is kind of the thing we do.
mhm.
If we could just, how the typical lady would say, I just wanted you to listen, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So when we could create space for ourselves, we could create space for the feminine energy to be. And the
Mm,
women, like, guys view it as they're giving me a hard time. They're just testing. I wrote an
mm,
article about this. They're really just
mm.
testing your trust and where you're going to be in this spot, which is cool. It's so cool to
Yeah,
watch.
yeah. How grounded are you going to stay even when they're vacillating emotionally?
And because
Yeah,
women will do that, and I don't
yeah,
mean it in
we do.
disrespect, you know.
We do. I'm sorry. You're not being disrespectful. It's true. I mean, I do. I should speak for myself. I'm not all women, but that can happen. And you're absolutely right. Having a strong center to say, hey, this is the direction we need to go in, or just being a calm listening ear, somebody that you can rest on and know that they have some footing and some grounding. It kind of keeps you sane, right? So that you're not constantly worrying with your thoughts.
Yeah.
But thanks for sharing that. I want to touch on something that you said a little bit earlier when you mentioned that when the men get in these communities and they become vulnerable and open up their lives to other men and begin to improve in the process, something happens in their relationships with their significant others as well. Can you touch more about that?
Yeah. Ooh, it's such an interesting dynamic because men have, and I see it all the time, and it was me. Like, any of this stuff I'm talking about, it's like a journey I went on.
Yeah.
Like, and then I learned, and then I dove into it, and then I was like, wow. And then I
Mm.
watched it with others.
Yeah.
Is what happens is men, we have been around too much feminine energy. in our society. Like, think about it. You've got a lot of fatherless kids, unfortunately. And this is why I'm a huge fan of, male role models. We have lack of role models for men. Nobody knows what this, I always say a playbook. I go, what playbook? I'll talk to guys. I go, what playbook you running by? Like, where's that information coming from? That's one. And then you have mostly female teachers, right? Everything in our society is pushing this all, there's a lot of gender confusion now, even more than ever, which is a challenge. And so they just don't have a guiding light. Like, hey, like, this is okay to be this way. It's okay. Like, it's okay that we want to shoot bow and arrows, that we want to go and maybe fire a gun here and there, that we want to do something pretty darn cool, and we're cool with it, But we're often too, and there's like, it's gotten even more challenging when relationships, like, guys aren't even out in the game anymore. Like, it's just, there's so much data out there that I'm looking at, and it just requires just a different inward perspective. And the women, you talked about the women, like, they want to help. They're starving for something. So they're like, they don't know what to do. Why would you? Like, they don't talk. I'm fine. All that stuff. Like, that's the biggest challenge. And then women have their own energy, and they need that. So I've really tapped into a lot of different things in that. So did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did. And also, as you were talking, it made me think that the reverse is also true. So if women who generally like to be expressive and talk and, air their concerns with their husbands, for instance, if there is this masculinity, dysfunctional masculinity, where everything's closed off, we don't speak about our feelings, or even if we did speak about our feelings, it's in a very maybe harsh way. There's no gentleness in the home. How does that affect the woman who is normally expressive and wants to talk about everything all the time? Does it shut that person down? Does she become silent? Like, what then happens when that masculinity is present? The masculinity that society may deem normal. What then happens when that masculinity is present?
Yeah, I think that's an awesome question. People haven't asked me that, and it could be a total new, different show for sure. So what do you think would happen? You meet resistance, nothing happens, nothing changes. So eventually the female retreats, right? So what does that retreat look like, right? The retreat could look like very disconnected from her husband. Oftentimes, if they have kids, they're over involved in their kids because the foundation of their relationship or marriage, if there's kids involved, is really the husband and the wife, and it should be. And there's been this teeter where the kids are running the show.
Yeah.
These are just some principles, right? Let's just think about it. So the female retreats, maybe she retreats overly into work. She retreats in the eating, any addictive, avoidant behavior. Or leaving the relationship, or cheating, or whatever that is. And they're out. And so the thing that I've seen with guys is because they're stuck, because they're stubborn, they lose their wives, and they don't see it early enough to fix it, or they're like, whatever. And then they're in crisis mode, and hopefully they get it. And it just requires men to understand a few things about themselves, lean into like good positive males, not the ones that may be like, hey, we're gonna go to the bar tonight and do like whatever. I'm talking soul
quality relationships,
like authentic, real stuff. And men need more of that for sure.
Iron sharpens iron.
It does, 100%.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That was powerful. I feel like you should add marriage counseling to your list of coach.
Well, it's funny because I'm very interested in the couples coaching space too. Like,
okay.
That's an interest, and it's interesting. I love having conversations with ladies and seeing where that goes, because maybe they need, like, so that they don't get disconnected. and they don't, these sideways stuff that shows up for them, they need to address their man in a way that can either open them up or give them more information to make different decisions in a healthy way, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. That was wonderful. I want to talk about like a stereotype about male nurses that if you could dismantle today, what would be that stereotype?
Oh, that's a tough one. That's a very interesting one. So, you could go to the stereotype of Meet the Parents, Greg Fokker, RN, like male nurse, right? Like, and I've got a humor about it. Like, why are you a male nurse? There's a lot of feminine attributes to that, right? But there's a lot of solid guys that are nurses, like, and I could appreciate it.
Or that you couldn't make it into medical school.
Yeah, that too. You didn't make it. How come you didn't want to be a doctor?
Yeah, right.
All the issues like they brought up in that movie, which is so great, right? Like for me personally, like I wanted that the pay level, right? Like I wanted that professionalism, but I wanted to be like in flight res. It was the guy part of me, right? And then it went into different spaces. But the one thing that I want to talk about in the male space is a lot of the work that I talk about with some of the men is like levels of codependence that men experience. So let's just think about nursing in general. Like, let's be honest, like nurses come to this field with wounds, with inner wounds. Like, they're in the helping profession because they have some things that they're trying to work out. Like there's a level of codependency. There's a level interweaved in this helping profession. We honor that. Like I honored that myself. But then you throw the guy part on it. So you think that there's male issues toppled with the issues of like, I think that we come with wounds anyway to nursing spaces. So that's like I call it like a little double whammy in the men's space for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, you did answer my question. Thank you. And so, I also want to touch about the coaching aspect of what you do, right? Because one of your, tag phrases on LinkedIn is that you help professionals reignite their purpose. You help them lead with confidence and build wealth with impact. So can you kind of talk about this framework that you've developed for helping nurse entrepreneurs grow their businesses and lead with impact?
Yeah, that's great. So, like I said, I used an assessment, and it's not mine. Like it was created in scientific between, mathematics and some science, which is pretty cool. And it's something that really kind of judges our habits of thought, like our risks of our thinking habits running kind of and we're unaware of them. They're subconscious. This kind of brings them to light. We have conversations about how this shows up in their life. Like our lives are not compartments. Like we try to say they are, and like we lock things in boxes, but how you do your job, how you do one thing is how you do everything. So
that's right.
So like people often approach me like, hey, I'm struggling in my business. I want my career to go better. My family, like my personal life may be out of sorts. I'm feeling like this, right? They may be like feeling like a 2 out of 10 on the inside, but they're like an 8 or a 9 and everything's fine. But they're like, hey, and so we kind of go through that like assessment. We, the assessment, we talk about how things may be showing up like, oh my God. And then we start to do the real work on it. And I tell people this, like, if you talk to any business leader, any CEO or anybody that runs a business, they'll say this, like 90% of their work problems are personal problems in disguise.
Wow.
And that's the truth. And so wherever you go, you bring yourself with you. So if your business is not growing or if you're stuck, it's you. Like, it's not me, it's you. But it's really some inner stuff.
Something else.
Yeah. So, and I said it on a couple other podcasts, is like your business will never outgrow you. And I've seen it myself. So you just need guidance and support and seeing something that you haven't seen and how you're thinking in a direction, right? And then the next step is sometimes you need someone to walk alongside you.
Yeah.
Like, hey man, this is showing up, because we normally, like, we get through a spot, we meet some resistance, normal resistance, and then we help coach you beyond that, and then you grow, right? And then the human mind, the beauty of us is we meet some other challenge because we were growing. And then there's another resistance, and a lot of resistance. I write articles around. Nurses have issues around money and worth and things of that nature. There's imposter syndrome. There's a lot of different like thought stuff that keeps them stuck in comparison. And there's the energy component, the male energy in nursing, which I've been looking at, and I'm like, that's where the birth of my theory came out.
Wow. Your business cannot outgrow you. So in order for your business to grow, you as a person needs to be growing in many dimensions, right? Personal growth being, I think, the most important, because working on things like consistency is important. Working on learning new things about business, about money, about tech, about whatever space that you're in. You know, if you spend all your time like watching TV or whatever, you're not learning anything new. How's that business going to do any better than it is? Very, very important. And then on your website, you make this statement that your habits of thinking drive your feelings, emotions, personality, behavior, actions, and ultimately the results you create in your life. So when you clearly understand the relationship between your habits of thinking, you'll discover that you can choose to think differently. End quote. I'm reading this book. I'm doing like a work through of this book called The Battlefield of the Mind. It's an old book by Joyce Meyer. She says something important, that you need to be thinking about what you're thinking about. So how, based on this statement, I think that there is a correlation there. How do your habits of thinking drive the results that you create in your life?
Can I give you an example to illustrate that?
Please do.
So there's a thought habit that people have that keeps them stuck, and it's called comparison, right? And it's something that you may be outwardly aware of, but it drives. And so one of the things that I look at is how this shows up in people's lives. So people, may be comparing themselves to where somebody else is, right? Like, but we don't know what actually they're doing. We don't know what they're thinking. We don't know their struggles, but we're judging, right? There's another comparison, is comparing ourselves to the way we think things should be. Is life showing up for us the way we think they ought to? And this is deep stuff. Like, I go in deep with this because people don't ever contemplate this, but it's the biggest thing that keeps them stuck, and it's their behavior. Like, they're not taking action. They're not doing something. And it's more than just learning. It's stepping into a new place that their mind has not experienced before. Right? Here's another comparison is we often we don't get started because we're afraid of what others are thinking, which sits there, just sits there. It's outward, but we cleverly cover it with words, even imposter syndrome. It's just another term of hey, I'm not good enough. What are they thinking? What's going on? And inside, all this stuff's bubbling. But on the outside, they're like, hey, I'm reading this cool book. Yeah. Hey, hey, I just started this new thing that I'm doing. Or I'm just for example, hey, I'm writing a book. Here's another thing. I'm writing a book. I'm like, okay, why are you writing a book? Well, my story. I'm like, well, what are you trying to do? We start to really unpack it. Is that the avenue that's going to get you really what you want? And the issue too is there's a lack of clarity. There's hey, I don't know where I'm going. And there's certain cases it's okay, having faith in this process. I trust in certain things. But when you have a very lack of clarity, you spin yourself cycling, and that your thoughts keep you actually paralyzed. And it's a pretty interesting thing. I go in deep with this with people, and just small shifts, and you're like, oh my God, people are like, wow, and that works.
Because you're able to sort of talk them through seeing beyond what they're saying.
And here's a trap, and I got into this trap. I'll share another example. So we all read personal development books, right? Like
Mhm.
it's short-term motivation, right? And
Mhm. Mhm.
motivation isn't the best fuel to run your business on. It gets you out of the chair for sure, but you need consistency and structure and a lot of in certain things and discipline, right? But the interesting thing is, and I share this with people because I've seen a ton of people just read a lot of books and they're still stuck. Like you think about it, personal development space is $1 billion industry.
Mhm.
Billions. And it's the success rate's about 2%,
Oh
3%.
gosh, that's terrible.
But like, are you taking action? But it's more than that. It's like seeing how you show up in that, what they're showing. Do I think their stuff is valuable? Sure. Do I think whatever is sure? But it requires a certain level of just stepping into a place that people may not be aware of. And even,
Mhm.
and no matter what level you're at, like
Yeah,
CEOs struggle with this, like all leaders, everybody, down to
yeah,
the nurse. So.
yeah. Information without application is like what, poetry or something.
Right.
You
And
got to do something with that information.
and inner awareness. It takes,
Mm.
even if you do something, you could be doing the not the right thing.
Yeah. If only as you read the book can like push you and actually physically move you to do the things, but that takes your own personal self
Well,
discipline.
I'll give you an, if you have a second, I'll give you an example. There's
Yeah, I
a lot of
do.
people that do like e-commerce type businesses
Oh
or
yeah.
network marketing businesses, and do I think some of them are great? Yeah, 100%. Like they're a great vehicle for somebody that has that kind of space for it. But say you had somebody who had just started in the business, right? And they like maybe have a few people on their team, and you gave them a business that was like that the top leadership, right? They couldn't handle how to manage that.
Mm,
You need to become something
something over
bigger
time.
in that process
Yeah.
that allowed you to get that.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, like, oh, if I just had that, and here's this other thought habit. We fantasize on thinking that sticks people all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And people are so stuck on that thought. Like they believe it. If I just had $1 million, I would just be so happy. Which, of course, you would be happy, but would you know how to double and triple that $1 million?
And
Right?
the data, they've done like
Yeah.
documentaries on it. Every one of these lottery winners, they're like
Right.
broke in like whatever, how
Broken in
many
like
years.
5 years. And you're like, how is that possible? Even if you just spent every day, you never did any saving or investing, like that's so much money. But it does happen. You're right. Because it really does begin with the education, the information, the application, self discipline, using that information that you've received wisely. So, yeah, thanks so much for sharing that. All right. Now we are going to transition into the media portion of our show. I've really enjoyed talking about this, and I feel like I don't know, I could talk about it more, and I'm just gaining so much wisdom from listening to you. But let's shift gears and talk about media. Do you watch any shows? Have you seen any in the past, maybe? What are your thoughts about how nurses are portrayed in the media?
That's interesting, right? Like, there's been some shows. Remember ER back in the day? Like when I was going to nursing school, that was like
A lot of people put that
full
on
on board. And it
yeah.
seemed like I was like, when I was in med surge classes, I'm like, they're talking about this on ER. Like,
Yeah.
what's up with this? So I used to love those shows, and I
Mhm.
didn't think they portrayed them too horribly. There was a show where the male nurse was an ER nurse, like
Mhm.
do you want to, like
Yeah.
it's, I think they do portray him in this supportive to the medical model
Mhm.
structure for
Mhm.
sure. That's like my impression.
Yeah.
Now, of course, you got Greg Fokker RN, which is
Mhm.
a movie, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's a very real challenge too. So
Yep.
that's portrayal for male nurses for sure.
Yeah. 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 And also the absence of male nurses widely, right? Maybe five. I can count maybe five or so. I haven't really seen that. It's very, very gender biased to women and also to hospitals. Like nurses can be in other settings besides hospitals. But let's move into our game section now. So I'm going to shake my jar around, pick a category, and then you, Mr. Todd Angelucci, author and coach and everything else, will come up with a plot line for a show that features a nurse, the protagonist of your show or movie or whatever. Okay, so let me shake it around and go ahead and pick one. Okay. All right, so your category is action.
Oh.
Are you an action type of guy?
I am an action guy.
Okay,
I do like action with a combination of like some inner message and heartfelt that just
got it.
You know.
Okay, well, then do it. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I would like to see, you know, oftentimes you see like an ER thing, right? You know, but I want to segue like to it. Like I like the ICU, you know, and just kind of a male that's kind of fun loving. But yet, like, really kind of present and able to think, but he cracks a joke and he serves as a grounding post, you know? And it, you know, what I'd love for that person to be, this would be great. Like, we should produce this right now.
I know.
And then, like, whatever the discipline, like, and I don't even care, like, so you got physicians, or you even have the housekeeping, right? They all kind of just like have a one-off, like, hey, what's up, you know? And like they're dealing with whatever issues on the unit or maybe in their family life. And they kind of just like weave in and out and connect with them. But then like when something needs to happen, he's like right there and he's like totally like knocking it out. Like he's like a pro. Does that make sense?
That's good.
That just came to me right now, honestly.
Well, yeah, because we're going to need to pitch this on, let's see, what network can we pitch this to? I don't know. But thank you for that. I would like you to share with my listeners where people can find you to connect with you.
Yeah, you know, like I have a website and it's going to be under construction because there's so much growth going on. It's toddangelucci.com. And I'm on all the socials as my name, Todd Angelucci.
Todd Angelucci, and that will all be in the show notes. But thank you for being a guest today. It's such a pleasure to be honoring men this month of June and just featuring all these amazing guests. Thank you for giving us a picture into your life, into your mission, and into your purpose. Thank you guys for tuning in. Please like, share, and subscribe. Keep leading, keep advocating. Let's change the narrative of nursing together. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for hanging with me till the end. I hope you gained some valuable insight into the world of nursing. If today's episode inspired you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who needs to hear about the amazing work nurses are doing. Let's keep breaking stereotypes and reshaping the narrative together. I'll see you next time.